are on. We're on now.
Yeah,
Perfect.
sweet.
Awesome. So I saw that you work right now at DigitalOcean. What do you do there? And like, what was your position before that?
Sure. I am a copywriter at DigitalOcean. So what that means is that I'm responsible for a lot of the marketing copy, a lot of the website copy, all of the emails that DigitalOcean users get. I'm usually the one that writes those blog posts, and increasingly now micro copy. So people that actually use the DigitalOcean platform, whenever they go onto their dashboard, so like, spin up a few servers and stuff, a lot of that small copy that says, choose your droplet, choose this, choose that. I actually write a lot of that too. So it's really cool. Like I span from marketing to design and creative, product. So I get to touch a lot of stuff. And then also like internal documentation that we use in-house as well. And before then, I worked at General Assembly. I was at GA for 2.5 years. I started out as a teaching assistant for the back-end web development course that they have there. And after that, I worked on their web development immersive boot camp in New York. And then I joined the marketing team, and I was in the marketing team for my final year there before I moved on to DigitalOcean.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And tell us what DigitalOcean is and what they do, so then like everyone who's watching it completely understands.
Yeah, for sure. So DigitalOcean is a cloud infrastructure company. We seek to make cloud infrastructure simple, which means if you are interested in having your website hosted and you need servers and you want to get it up on servers, you want to get it up and running, we provide the servers for you to use to then be able to completely put your website, your web application up. So it could be a simple website, or it could be a huge, web application like an e-commerce site or whatever. There are actually startups that use the DigitalOcean platform. And we also publish a lot of tutorials for people who don't really know much about server management or infrastructure in general, who want to get their stuff up and running. So we have about 1,100 tutorials right now. And it's great, especially for people who who don't know much about servers, who don't know much about Linux, and all of our servers are Linux servers. So yeah.
That is awesome. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, how did you get into like tech and the tech space?
For sure. This is actually funny. I believe you work at Flatiron School, is that right?
Yeah, I did a summer fellowship at Flatiron School. They had like the Computer Science Educator Fellowship, which I jumped right in. Yeah, and I'm still in good collaborations and conversations with them, which is awesome.
That's cool. The reason I ask is because one of the instructors there, Steven Nunez, is actually a good friend of mine. We've been friends for about 15 years, and he taught me how to program in 2012. I was in between jobs, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I thought that I wanted to do more community management type work, and he was like, well, why don't you learn Ruby? And he started teaching me Ruby, and I spent about a year just on my own and with classes with him learning Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And then he was actually hired at General Assembly to develop their 10-week back-end web development course, which meets twice a week for 3 hours and teaches people the basics of Ruby, Ruby on Rails, and how to get a Rails app up and running by the end of the course. So he brought me on as his first teaching assistant for that first actual ever course that they had at GA. And from there, then I stayed at GA. I was working in non-technical roles, but it wasn't until 2014 that I attended my first Ruby conference. I got a scholarship to attend Madison Ruby in Madison, Wisconsin. And that was the first time that I ever really interfaced with a lot of software engineers, software developers. It's funny because in my work at the coding bootcamp at General Assembly in New York, I had marginal relationships with developers because I was also responsible for planning events, planning panels and things like that. So we could bring developers from the community into the classroom to talk to our students who themselves, they all wanted to be developers. But it wasn't until I started going to the Ruby conferences and doing the Ruby circuit that I started to immerse myself more and more in the community. And about a year and a few months ago, I started to think, well, maybe I want to go the software developer route. When I learned Ruby, that was the initial plan. It was, all right, I'm going to learn Ruby, I'm going to learn Rails, I'm going to get good at it, and then I'm going to get a junior dev job. But I wasn't really sure if that was exactly what I wanted to do. I have lots of interests, and I'm very much a big picture person. So I like knowing enough about one thing to be like, okay, I kind of get how that works. But then I find something else that piques my interest, and I want to know how they're related. And I didn't know that being a developer was exactly the right path for me. So I had to do a little bit of soul searching. And I've been a writer for almost all of my professional career. I started on strategic communications and PR before I went into marketing. Before then, I went into the startup scene. But I realized a few things. I realized I love writing. I love breaking things. What I love about tech and coding is I like to break something and then figure it out and then write out how I figured it out so that someone else can then parse that information and be able to do, be able to do it the right way, or at least the hacky way. I can't really say the right way, but the way that worked for me. So I started trying to figure out, okay, well, if a developer isn't what I want to do, I know that I want to work in tech. I know that I want to speak to a tech-minded audience. What do I have to do? And I kind of landed on technical writing being the path for me. And I wanted to work for a SaaS company or a platform as a service company. I knew that I wanted to work at a company that had a highly technical product that was geared towards developers, engineers, developer teams, startups, people who were trying to scale. So that led me directly to DigitalOcean, because I knew for a while that they were looking for writers, and they actually had an opening. They never had a copywriter before. And given my background and that I was clearly interested enough in tech that I was going to conferences and I was doing stuff on my own, but I also really liked the ability to kind of take that information and make it easy for people to understand and make people feel like, okay, great, I understand what this product is. So I was brought on as a copywriter in June. Through this whole past year of soul searching, like a lot of other things happened. I was speaking at conferences on top of already attending conferences. I started talking a lot around diversity in the tech scene. Christina and I founded Women of Color in Tech Chat in June. I was kind of like plugging myself into conversations around, pay in the tech space, what groups were being left out of the diversity in tech conversation. So the first half of the year, I was really focusing a lot on the diversity in tech stuff. And then as time went on, I really realized that I wanted to focus a lot more on the writing and writing for a tech-focused company. So I kind of did both of those things in parallel for a while.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well, tell us about, I guess, women of color in tech then.
Yeah.
Because like that, I thought that you guys started that like 2 years ago, the way that it has like transformed. So to hear that it started in June, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it happened really, really crazy. So there was a lot of things that led up to the Women of Color in Tech Chat. Christina could definitely tell you her side and what led her to that path and then what led me. For me, it started about 2 years ago when I was working at General Assembly. I just noticed that there weren't many other women of color in my office. And I was kind of like, all right, this is a thing. And as time went on, I realized that anytime I heard about women in tech, it was very noticeable that there were very few women of color. If anything, there was maybe a few Asian women, one Black woman here and there. But every time I'd go to a tech conference, and I attended a lot of tech conferences on scholarship, I noticed that anytime people would say, yay, we have X amount more women this year than we had last year, I would look around and I was like, okay, that's great, but why don't we have more Blacks and Latinas and these groups that I see myself a part of? I'm Dominican, I'm Latina, so I really didn't see myself in that crowd. And in April, I penned this blog post where I talk about, it's entitled something like Houston, we have a problem, like the problem with diversity in tech. And I basically just lay it out and I say, well, every time we talk about women in tech, it's very clear that cisgender white women are the women that we are putting up there, that we're propping up there for diversity, which is great because they are women and they are underrepresented in that sense. But for people of color and for other marginalized groups that don't get that kind of FaceTime. They don't get that kind of visibility. All it does is that it furthers our erasure. And I mentioned how as a woman of color, you have to decide which category you fit in. Are you a person of color or are you a woman? Why can't you be both things at the same time? And why isn't that okay? And I think like even the breakdown of statistics also tend to, you know, inadvertently, I don't think that people do this on purpose, but they inadvertently erase groups that belong to you know, you belong to multiple underrepresented groups. And I think it's very important. So this was a conversation that I was already thinking about in April. And in May, I asked Christina, because I knew that she had been a community manager for Code Newbie, if she would be interested in helping me create just a Twitter chat. I really wanted to know what other women of color are out there. Christina and I are both women of color, and we both connected through Twitter. So we thought that Twitter would be a great platform just to see who else was out there, what people were doing, because it was very frustrating for us to be from New York, a major city, a city that's a huge hub for startups and the tech scene. And it's very difficult to find women of color. It's very difficult to find Black women, Latina women. And there weren't many places for us to meet. You might meet somebody at a Women in Tech event, but I wanted it to be very intentional and for it to be women of color in tech. So we settled on the hashtag, which had been around since about 2010, but had very little traction. Like groups would use it a few weeks at a time. But the last time it had been used was about 6 weeks before we started the chat. And it was just going to be a chat. It was going to be a one-time thing. We came up with a list of, I think, 8 questions. 5 minutes leading up to the chat, we didn't know what was going to happen. It started, and it blew up our mentions. Like we didn't have the Women of Color in Tech chat handle. We were using it from our own private Twitter accounts, and it gained traction. And people were like, "Okay, when's the next one?" And this was, I think, the first week in June, and the second week. Shanley Kane and Ash Dryden of Fun Club approached us and they said, "Hey, do you guys want to be the first recipients of Fun Club?" And we were like, "Oh, wow, that's awesome. This is now a thing. So we have to create a website and we have to get logos and this was like in a 4-day span. I was leaving the following week for Portland to speak at 2 conferences. Christina and I were doing everything through text message, and I would be at work trying to do stuff, set up email, email marketing stuff, and she was working on the website. And then like 2 weeks after we had our first chat, we were funded by Fun Club. So it was very whirlwind. And under the women, so then we decided we had this money. Christina and I already had things that we wanted to do separately. So we said, why don't we just put that under the Women of Color in Tech chat banner? I had already been curating a list of tech conferences that offer scholarships to underrepresented people. She was interested in doing a stock photo shoot because when she was doing our website, she noticed how difficult it was to actually get pictures of women of color. So she was like, we might as well just do it ourselves, because if I can't find this for our own website, we might as well do it and then just give it to folks. So so we did quite a bit. We did I think like 5 chats. We had an event. We sent people to conferences. I would just like email people and say, hey, would you guys be willing to, we'll pay you money. Can we get tickets so that we can send people to conferences? So we did sponsorships with a few conferences. We did the first stock photo shoot, which went really well. And then of course, like people started emailing us about job opportunities and such. We sent out hiring newsletters for women of color, people who were on our mailing list who were by far majority women of color. We also had people who were allies who were just interested in general in what we were doing. And we had companies like Kickstarter, Lyft, Pinterest email us and say, hey, yeah, we want to be a part of this newsletter, which was really, really cool. Set up a Slack channel. So it became like a huge community thing. And the great thing was that a lot of it were just ideas that Christina and I had. They were primarily ideas that Christina and I had about things that we were really passionate about. She was really passionate about making sure that people understood that the tech ecosystem meant more than just having developers. Christina is in identity and access management. She's an InfoSec. She wanted people to know, hey, you can have an opportunity there. And I'm not a developer myself. So we try our best to talk about different people in the tech ecosystem that are not necessarily software engineers, although we love our engineers, they're great. And of course, the Women of Color in Tech photo shoot, scholarships to conferences, which is really important to me. Trying to get people opportunities and real jobs that pay really well, that can help people in more ways than one, help people, help families, like incomes that will help generations of people. So we're really passionate about that. And it's only been 6 months now, almost 7 months that we've been doing this. And yeah, it's been crazy. It's been crazy. It's been amazing, but it's been like a lot.
Yeah, you guys have been doing like so many things, and it's just so impressive, and like kudos.
Thank you.
Like I completely get it. It's like a whirlwind. You're like, oh, all right, and then you're like trying to build up and build up and build up.
Yeah, and you have to like it's the constant struggle of like, okay, yeah, you're getting excited because people are getting excited, and it's like, okay, like let me make sure I have balance and I balance this, because we're not trying to make this into a huge organization. Like that wasn't the goal of this. We have I just started my job at DO, and I really loved my job, and I wanted to be able to kind of continue on that track. But then, this is something that I think it has gone beyond us. Like the kind of support that we've gotten from people has really propelled it to be what it is. I mean, it's to the point now that people email us and say, hey, we have a job opening here. Can you please get it out to your community? Can you guys retweet this? Can you guys do this? Which is a fantastic, place to be in. But I think Christina and I were also like, is this real? Because we would have thought that somebody else would have done this, and they would have done this at a larger scale. So what you believed that we had been around for 2 years, we were surprised that so many people were like, oh my God, this is great. Because we were like, this should have been around years ago. And this should have had like a major organizational backing. Like it shouldn't have been like a little bootstrap thing on Twitter by, 2 women of color who have full-time jobs from New York City. But that's what it is. And I think as a result, so many people are excited about it. And I think this too, from people of color in tech, just seeing how excited people get, that they kind of also steer you towards opportunities that wouldn't have been available before without this platform.
Why do you think it's the case that like you were the ones who essentially were the first ones to do this? Why do you think that it didn't happen before it, or maybe has and it wasn't as successful? Mm-hmm. Because for us, for Pocket, I was very surprised that no one had did what we did before. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, all right, well, let's do that. For sure. There of course are organizations that have done this, and I don't know, like to different varying degrees, and they also their aims were completely different than what we were doing. I think obviously like there were a lot more niche organizations. Like there are organizations that cater to Latinas, that cater to Black women in tech, and to other groups. But Christina and I really wanted it to be more of a banner. We didn't want it to seem that the struggles of all women of color in tech were the same, because that's absolutely not the case whatsoever. So, having it this one banner wasn't to just say, oh yeah, we're all on the same boat. I mean, it's very, very obvious that there are groups that are at more disadvantage than others when it comes to being represented in the tech industry. But we wanted it to be very much about a sisterhood, about feeling like, okay, let's just we're kind of like all of the outsiders in a grade. We're the kids that don't fit into any other group, so we're all going to sit on a table together at lunchtime. That's kind of what we wanted to do. And we wanted, and I really don't know. I think, to be honest, I think Twitter really helped with that. Christina and I already had a platform on Twitter. We had been tweeting about tech and things going on in tech for a while. And I think having that audience was what really helped us. Because if you can inject yourself into the tech community on Twitter, and of course there are sub-communities depending on languages and all kinds of stuff, but if you can get into that community, I think that being a part of that community really helped us. If it wasn't for, this started on Twitter. This was a complete 100% Twitter invention. It didn't exist outside of Twitter. So it's very easy for people to be like, whoa, this is kind of cool. And if they know you, if they trust you, if they are aware of your work, and I had been writing about diversity in tech for over a year at that point on Model View Culture. Christina had been attending numerous events in New York City. She's been volunteering, obviously, through Code Newbie, Black Girls Code. So people knew that we were about it, but then to kind of call it what we did, Women of Color in Tech Chat, with the hashtag, making it very, very Twitter, very 2015 in every sense of the word. I think that it was just something that could have only happened now the way that it did. And again, because we were very clear about it being a group
we wanted it to be about women of color and trying to represent as many different kinds of women of color as we could, and even extend it to non-binary people of color, because there were people that reached out to us and they said, you know what, I want to be a part of this community, but I don't identify as woman, I identify as femme, I don't have I don't fit the gender binary, but nonetheless, I would like to be a part of this community. And we thought, okay, cool. Well, you know, we want, this is going to be a space for you too. Yeah, if it wasn't for Twitter, I don't know how this would have been possible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And final question, what could you give to people of color who want to enter the tech industry? Either if they want to enter it through like a technical route, or even better, like not a technical route.
Yeah, for sure. I can talk a lot about the non-technical route, because I had a lot of people who were like, okay, you're a writer with experience in communications and you want to work for a tech startup. Why? And I had to be very careful about framing that story properly. What I would say is first of all, if you want to enter non-technical, I would still try to learn something technical, whether it is learn how to program, start a blog from scratch, learn how to host it on something like Heroku, DigitalOcean, just so you get your hands wet, because I think one of the things about the tech industry is that fundamentally the people that work in tech are curious. They're really, really curious. They're people that want to learn, that really want to get it. They really want to understand. And I think that if that's the audience that you want to be a part of, that you want to speak to, getting to know even a little bit of it will let you know whether or not tech in particular is for you. Because working in finance or in operations at a SaaS company may seem like it's the same as working at, you know, a financial firm or whatever, but it's really not. The product is very different. And even if you're not working on the product side, you want to know what the product is, because that's the company that you're going to be working for. So you want to know if this is the company that is going places that you're interested in going. I would say that for people that want to do the non-technical route, that's definitely the greatest piece of advice. Just start reading about what different technologies are out there. Start going to meetups. Start meeting people, because the startup scene is very different from the corporate scene, which is obviously very different than government and other industries. So if you have a skill set that you can apply in just about any industry, get to learn technology, get to learn why people are so moved, so impressed, so enthusiastic about everything that's going on in the industry at this point in time, so that you're sure that this is where you can see yourself. Because if the tech company that you're in now is not the one that you want to be in 5 years, you kind of want to tell another company, yeah, you know, I've worked in the tech scene, I kind of understand X, Y, Z. So yeah, I'd really say get to learn as much about technology as possible. Be curious. That's the first thing. Be curious. And show that you're passionate. People that work in tech are passionate. They want to like you. Remember that when you go on an interview, they want to like you. So just show that passion, show that enthusiasm, and don't be afraid of learning something new. You don't have to be a master of all trades, but just know enough about it so that you can kind of have a conversation about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stop the broadcast now.